Welcome to Death on Clare Island, Chapter 15. No surprise that the owners of the Wagon Wheel pub had chosen a country and western theme. Red wheels were fastened to the front of the pub's facade, which faced Lucan Street. A moose's rack of horns guarded the entrance. The antlers must have come from the States because Irish elk are extinct, but that's where the illusion of the Wild West and wide open spaces ended. Bending myself under the lintel, I sensed I was about to become Gulliver in the land of Lilliput. Anyone over 5'2" or 5'3" wouldn't clear the opening without stooping at the waist. Inside, Your Cheatin' Heart by Daniel O'Donnell played in the background to accompany the litany of voices emanating from the bar. Cigarette smoke created a blue veil through which I saw that most of the people at the bar were men. A few women lounged off to the left, where some benches were scattered around snack tables. I headed in that direction, hoping for one of the available places in the farthest corner of the room. The door and the bar were both visible from that vantage point. "What would you like to drink, miss?" asked the dark-haired, freckled waitress as she handed me a snack menu. I smiled at her. "Bottled Ballygowan water wine will be fine. We've got a great selection of draft American beers," she said, pointing to the keg funds behind the counter. "Thank you, but I'm not a beer drinker." I smiled again as she nodded and circled away. Perusing the menu, my mouth watered for the chips, thick French fries made from powdery Irish potatoes. The barbecued ribs intrigued me too, as I hypothesized whether an Irish pub could improve on the mesquite ribs I'd once had in Colorado. I ordered them, and the chips, along with a bowl of vegetable soup. While I drank my water and waited for my food, I watched the people around me and caught snatches of conversation. Bits and pieces of chatter about concerts, computers, the internet, and the information age floated back to me. Judging from the discussions, almost everyone here had a technology or computer job. Was Allen Skye one of the men clustered around the bar? If so, he worked at one of the multinational companies in the area, maybe? Did he deal at work? I couldn't help wondering. Then again, did he work at all? Or did he make all his money through peddling drugs to children? In her efforts to educate me, Aunt Georgina said that similar social and economic groups associated with specific pubs in town. All the doctors and nurses went to the Harp Bar, for example, while the farmers went to McCarthy's. I couldn't help but reflect upon where I would fit in if I remained in Ireland. The waitress appeared with my food, and all thoughts of Allen Skye and the social register of Castlebar faded away. The ribs, meaty and gooey with barbecue sauce, tasted heavenly. Eating them reminded me of the trip that Dylan and I had taken to Durango, Colorado. We rode the steam train to a small mining town called Silverton, up in the mountains. It had taken 4 hours for the train to climb up through the aspen trees and over the gorges and rivers. Starving when we arrived, we headed for the first barbecue restaurant that we saw. We ate ribs and laughed at each other, our hands and faces becoming incredibly messy with sauce. The picture melted away. I missed the States and the home that Dylan and I had shared for 5 years. It belonged to me now, me alone. The waitress came back, ready to take my plate. "Can I get you anything else? Is everything okay?" "I'm fine, thank you, but there is something else you might be able to help me with. I'm looking for Allen Skye. I was told that he frequents this pub. Do you know him?" She froze when she heard the name. Then her eyes opened wide as she brought them up to meet mine. "Allen Skye? No, can't say that I do now," she replied, snatching up the dishes and moving back over to the bar, where she had a conversation with the bartender. Both of them cast glances at me while their heads bobbed up and down. Then the bartender picked up a mobile phone. The call was brief. The waitress came back with my check, looking anxious to collect my money and get away from me. I sat for a while, listening to the snippets of chatter around me, waiting for Allen Skye to show himself. I was sure he would when he heard that a stranger, especially a Yank, was in the pub asking questions about him. As an hour passed, half-empty glasses piled up on some of the tables. The smoke thickened, and the evening news played on the television. By 7 o'clock, when there was still no sign of Skye, I rose from my corner perch and inched across the room. I made my way through the crowd at the bar toward the door. And then, someone who looked like he was a wide receiver in the NFL blocked my path. Like thunder, his voice tumbled out of his 6-foot-plus frame. "I'm Allen Skye. You were looking for me?" "I'm Star O'Brien, and yes, I'm looking for you. Can we sit down?" I gestured to a couple of stools at the bar. He nodded and turned his blond head and blue eyes in that direction. As we sat, the bartender came with 2 pints of Guinness and then disappeared as quickly as a flash of lightning. Skye was young. He didn't seem any more than 20. Had Raymond Nolan sent me on a wild goose chase? This guy looked like good old American apple pie and ice cream. Along with the blonde hair and blue eyes, he had 2 dimples that were in full view because he kept smiling. Hard to imagine him as a drug dealer. "So what can I do for you, Star?" The dimples and grin persisted. I figured the cockiness was his primary personality trait. "You can tell me about your friend Matthew Sumner. I'm investigating his death for his family. I'd like it if you could give me your thoughts on what type of person he was and who his other friends happened to be. Also, how often you two went boating around Clare Island." I hoped Skye wouldn't realize that I knew nothing about their relationship other than what Raymond Nolan had told me. "Oh, yeah, I heard about poor old Matt. Too bad." "So you did know each other." I paused, waiting for him to fill in the space. But he wasn't going to let me get the upper hand. I realized that groveling or lying would be necessary to get him to give up what he knew. I found that looking into families' secret lives sometimes requires extraordinary efforts. "Oh, yeah, he wasn't a bad fellow to have around once in a while. The girls liked him," Skye said. Boy, would I love to wipe that smirk off his face, but I knew that wouldn't work. Using my softest voice, I whined instead. "I'm not very good at this kind of thing, but Matthew's sister asked me to talk to people about his spiritual and emotional health just before he died. You seem like the kind of person who'd understand a lot about someone's psychology. I only have a few questions and then I'll get out of your life." Boy, I made myself sick with this approach, but it worked, because he shrugged by way of consent and scanned around the bar as if to gauge who was watching and listening to us. He must have decided the coast was clear. "You want me to tell you about that for your investigation?" he asked. One of his eyebrows rose quizzically at me. The dimples were gone now. "And what do I get for this effort? What's the quid pro quo?" He downed his pint of Guinness, watching me all the while, then motioned to the bartender for another one. I daintily moved my glass around and waited. I also marveled at the aggressiveness and fearlessness that youth brings with it. How could someone so beautiful be so ugly inside? I wouldn't want to meet him alone in an alley one night. Clearly, this discussion would be like panning for gold. I'd get a lot of dirt and grit, and maybe only a nugget, and I might not recognize the nugget right away. "I found his body," I told him, knowing full well it wasn't true. "I also know that he made some secret trips to Dublin recently." "That's a lie. I was at the inquest. You and the entire population of Clare Island found the body. And I know that Matt visited Tranquility House, if that's what you mean by secret trips to Dublin. In fact, I recommended it to him. Skye crossed his arms over his chest. His secrets were obviously locked up tight, and I still hadn't found the right words to open the safe. But what he said confirmed that his link to Matthew was through drugs. Was he a client of yours? I parried back. Is that why you recommended Tranquility House? I don't have clients, Miss O'Brien. I have a family of dependents. They depend on me for their bliss, their version of reality. Matt had his own sense of reality. I couldn't sell him mine. What was his interest in Tranquility House then? He had many interests and problems. I recommended Tranquility as a possible solution to those problems. Skye yawned and surveyed the bar. I'd lost him, at least for the moment, so I decided on another bluff and more lies. Matthew was interested in the owner of a particular motorboat. Some of the residents on Clare Island say it was frequently anchored around the island's coves and inlets. His diary describes dates, times, and places that he'd seen it. A log of the tides was plotted in conjunction with the information. Any ideas about why he'd do that? Skye's eyes bored into mine like a power drill into solid wood. Whose boat? What's the registration number? Bingo! I had his attention. As you said earlier, what do I get in exchange for my information? Skye shrugged, studied my face, and seemed to consider what to do next. Okay, you've got a deal, he said, but I want the diary. This was getting out of hand. My inner conscience screamed at me to stop lying. But then why should I? I didn't know Skye the truth. He was a drug dealer, and I had a client whose brother was dead, possibly because of this very man. I took a deep breath and smiled at him. I don't have it. I turned it over to the police, but I remember what was in it, and I made copies of the pages with the schedule of comings and goings of the boat. I'll tell you what I know, Skye said, but you'd better not be lying to me. I'll want copies of those pages. You can send them to this address. He reached into his pocket and handed me a business card. It had his name and address, the latter a post office box. I turned the card over. On the back it read, Skye Consulting. The sky's the limit. Geez, even crooks had business cards. I stuck the card in my jacket pocket and waited for him to speak again.